Watch this.
Happy Halloween. Thanks for joining us here on your Monday. Brian will be back tomorrow. All right, headed into election season, the Secretary of State has a very important job to do, ensuring that Idaho has safe and secure elections statewide. But some activity on the internet runs directly against that mission, and they call it misinformation. Incorrect statements posted online about election dates, poll locations, of course, a lot more, you know that. But it's not just limited to basic fact checks, because some posts turn into disinformation, where intentionally incorrect information is used to craft a narrative. And the Idaho Secretary of State's office is asking for your help to push back against this. What does this all mean? Well, Andrew Bartline talked to the Secretary of State's office here today. And Andrew, it's a big topic nationwide. What are they looking for here in Idaho?
Well, it kind of starts with that discussion of how do you balance that line between free speech and then, of course, ensuring that this isn't harming anything with the election. That can be difficult. So what they're trying to do, when I spoke with Chief Deputy Secretary of State Chad Houck, he says that there's a portal now that exists. Now, what they're looking for in reports that people can give this to them, well, it starts with this with international and right here at home. Houck says people are pushing incorrect information. You can report that to them if you think it is harmful.
Let me give you an example. Just recently, there was a narrative floating around one of the counties here in the state of Idaho that you could not register on election day if your election day was early voting. And that's actually a false piece of information. So countering that, knowing that that conversation is happening in the social media avenues, it's not something you're going to go and erase, but it is something that you at least then know that you need to counter.
Coming up to this election, I see you guys have this resource out there, and I think to myself, I see stuff all the time that I have questions about. I'm going to report a few. So the first tweet, I sent you this earlier. He says, remember, currently, Republicans are anti-democracy. If this was reported to you, how do you guys even navigate this tweet?
So that one's actually pretty easy. Whether you agree or disagree with this particular gentleman's tweet, the things that he stated as fact that are factual based, the date of the election, those types of things, those are accurate. The remaining things in the tweet are opinion. And he's completely entitled to his opinion, whether or not someone disagrees with it, agrees with it, or otherwise. But again, this one's an easy one. It's not one we would necessarily want to have reported to us. It is something, though, that you need to look at and consider for yourself as an educated voter, whether you want to pass that information along. And that becomes the biggest part of the challenge, is when information that's just put out there gets passed along, it starts to actually gain some credibility because it might come from a different source that's actually more credible than the originator.
So this second tweet then, if you haven't heard, Idaho is a mail-in state, and they have already found bags of ballots in the river. Does this concern you? Is this something you'd want to be reported?
That's one we'd want to see. And again, that's not one we're necessarily, we're not looking at trying to take that down, but that's the type of change that we want to understand that are out there, the narratives that we want to see that are out there, because those are the things that do blow up into larger theories. I'm not aware of anywhere in our state that a bag of ballots has been found in a river, let alone a bag of marked ballots, which would be another clarification. It goes beyond that, and I'm not trying to split hairs, but no, that one's just straight up false.
Houck says this has been a growing problem since the 2016 election, where there's some evidence to suggest the Russian government attempted to influence American elections through social media. And there's other countries that have been involved in that too, North Korea, Iran, just to name a couple off the top of my head. But again, there's a problem here locally with that too, where people are continuing to spread information, whether they know it or not, that's incorrect. So they want to get out in front of it and try to stop that. They have that form up online where you can do so. Send the link, send a screenshot, things of that nature, so they can figure out where this is coming from and try to provide more information rather than censoring information, because that's sort of the trick. Not to censor it, but to provide additional context to where the truth might lie.
You just basically explained this, but I'm going to be very blunt here. They don't have the ability to remove things off social media.
No.
Correct?
No, they have relationships with a couple social media sites. I think Twitter and Facebook, he mentioned specifically when I talked with Houck, and they can have that conversation with them about things they're concerned about.
Good to know. And if you're looking to connect with this resource, Andrew will have more later on our website, ktvb.com. We get a lot of messages on the daily about misinformation. So I think this is the state hearing it and saying, okay, we're going to do something about it.
Absolutely.
All right. Andrew Bartline reporting for us. Thank you, Andrew. We'll stay on theme here. 8 days until the election here in Idaho and across the country, the big midterms. It's a week from tomorrow, and if you missed any of the political action, there's, big election cycle with lawmakers and all the statewide elected leaders. They're all up for vote next week, so if for some reason you missed this, check in on your ballot. Now, one of the big ones, the race for Idaho Lieutenant Governor, and it's an interesting one. Longtime Idaho House Leader, Republican Scott Bedke, he's taking on Democrat candidate, attorney Terry Pickens-Manweiler. Now, the pair debated major policy and leadership questions on Idaho Public Television. And here on the 208, we've seen your questions about where the candidates are going right now, where everything stands, what's going on. And it's interesting in this race, too. The Idaho Lieutenant Governor, it's a very unique role in Idaho because the Lieutenant Governor in our state, they sort of have the freedom to pick a topic or two that they're going to really make their passion project while they're in office. And Lieutenant Governor, of course, has a lot of other responsibilities in Idaho, but both candidates were asked about their personal priorities and what their emphasis is going to be as Lieutenant Governor. Bedke and Terry Pickens-Manweiler had very different answers.
I think the number one thing we need to do as a state is to drought-proof our state. We live in the arid West, as was said, we're the fastest growing state in the nation, and we're not entitled to any more water from Mother Nature. So it's going to be incumbent upon us to stretch that water that we have, to conserve it, and then to honor the water rights that the state has granted through the years.
First one is to restore reproductive freedom to this state. That is an issue that has been long important to me. It has been something I have fought decades for. And to live in a state where my daughter does not have the fundamental protections and freedoms that I've had my whole life is a real big challenge for me. And I do plan on addressing it, whether or not if it's working through with the legislature or if it's creating a ballot initiative that can be put through. But I do plan to focus my efforts on restoring reproductive freedom to the state.
Another major topic for the future leaders of Idaho could be either one, growth. And here's how each candidate addressed growth and the pains that can come with it for Idaho communities.
Yeah, well, unlike my opponent, I'm not pining for the past. I'm actually planning for the future. And what I would like to see in Idaho, and I can do it through the Lieutenant Governor's office, is be the liaison, like I said, to the legislature. Because there are a whole host of things that we can be doing to plan for growth. There is no question that Idaho is growing at a rapid pace. The question is in the 20 years that my opponent's been in office, has he properly planned for what's coming the next 20 years? And the answer is no.
So, it's an easy concept. The growth should pay for growth. Not, let's coin a phrase here, legacy citizens. All this growth is also coming back and it is being paid for by those that were here before. I don't know that that's overly fair. I think Idahoans expect there to be cost of living increases in their taxes, etc. But when your property taxes have doubled in the last 5 years, you could make a strong case that growth is not paying for itself.
And if you want to hear more of what each candidate had to say, you can find it on the Idaho Public Television YouTube page or on their website. We'll also link to it on our website as well. All right, also on the ballot next week, a constitutional amendment asking Idahoans a big question. Should the Idaho legislature be allowed to call themselves back into session? Right now in Idaho, only the governor has the power and ability to call lawmakers back for a special extraordinary session after they adjourn for the year. Now, the proposed amendment would require 60% of lawmakers to agree that they want to go back into session, and they're going to have to agree on what they're going to talk about. Good idea, bad idea, depends on who you ask about this. But we've heard some major takes on this, including now from former Idaho Governor Butch Otter. He sat down with me to discuss the ballot question and what his experience was like as governor in terms of dealing with special sessions and requests for one. It's about a week out from the November general election, and thousands of Idahoans have a yes or no decision to make on their ballot. Should the Idaho Constitution be amended to allow the Idaho legislature to call themselves back for special legislative sessions? Former Idaho Governor Butch Otter is speaking out on the issue. It wasn't too long ago that it was him in the governor's office considering the topic. But almost a full election cycle later, he recalls the very end of his term.
I walked out of that office at about 10 o'clock in the morning. I can tell you exactly.
Otter tells me he has stayed very busy since leaving office, being plugged into the Idaho politics world as a part of it. And as a former governor, Otter says he's speaking out. He doesn't think Idahoans should support giving lawmakers the ability to call themselves back.
I never saw a governor, including myself, that was requested to call a special session that they didn't call it. And so to have the legislature end up calling themselves back in, I think you're just inviting the idea of a full-time legislature.
Governor Otter, speaking from experience, he says, believes that Idaho governors have hit the mark on calling lawmakers back, keeping it strictly for when it's needed.
I called one special session in 12 years. If I had called a special session every time a legislator asked me to call, would have had as many as 2 or 3 sessions, special sessions, every year after the regular session. So it's a bad idea. You're going to lose a very important cultural thing and value in Idaho as well. And that is, you're going to lose the citizen legislator.
In recent weeks, we've heard from Idaho lawmakers who believe Idahoans should vote yes on the ballot question. Assistant House Majority Leader, Republican Representative Jason Monks, supports the idea on the principle of equal branches of government.
I think it's an important function and privilege that we should be allowed to do. I think it's a privilege that's been given to the courts. It's also been given to the governor's office. They don't really have to ask our permission or any other, one of the 3 branches of government to be able to do their job.
Critics of the idea to allow lawmakers to call themselves back into session say it's a road to a full-time legislature. And Monks believes giving lawmakers the option to call themselves back will actually prevent messy legislative sessions that drag on in the future.
A couple years ago, we never sine died. The House did, and the Senate did. And so we were technically in session the entire year. That we had to do that because it was the only way to make sure that we were able to respond to COVID emergency problems that may have come up. And by allowing us to call ourselves back in will really prevent us from being forced to be a year-round legislature, which really nobody wants.
Otter argues that the Idaho Constitution is clear on what the balance of power should look like in the gem state.
Well, all of those things, Joe, were put in the Constitution by the founders because they didn't want that balance to be so far to one side, the executive branch, or to the legislative branch. They wanted them to be able to have the checks and balances that we now have because the legislature can't call themselves back into a special session.
I think it's important for us to be able to work as a legislative body. It's not necessarily about passing legislation. It's just whether or not we can get to discuss issues. We may call ourselves back in and decide, you know what, there's nothing for us to do, or the best course of action is to wait, and that's okay too. But having that conversation, I think, is critical.
One of the great reputations Idaho has is we're one of the least regulated states in the nation. If you got a full-time legislature, which you will have, I predict, legislature, when they're in session, other than maybe budget, and even sometimes they can be up to mischief. We're here, we need to do something, let's do this or let's do that. So now you got another law.
So we'll find out in a little more than a week on November 8th. And that question we just talked about, along with dozens of others, they're on your ballot. And if you want to get more information, we've got you covered. You can check out the KTVB voter guide, and that includes voting location info, mobile voting, election day voting, everything available that you need, ktvb.com. You can also get this sent right to you right now, 208-321-5614. Just text us the word VOTE, and we'll send you a guide directly to your phone. The 208, we'll be right back after this. Well, Halloween is obviously a day for people to dress up in a costume, something funny. See, I'm Brian Holmes. But, you know, sometimes you do be something scary, something timely, whatever. But how about those costumes that, you know, they're more than just one day a year? We're talking about team mascots. And one mascot from Idaho is getting some national attention and love. And yes, it's a potato from Idaho. The Shelley Russets are in the potato sack race of their life right now. The championship round of the Best High School Mascot in America contest put on by Scorebook Live, a website dedicated to high school sports nationwide. And Boomer, the Burbank Russet from Shelley, is doing pretty good. Even the hosts of SB Live know who could be the king of the contest.
So a very fitting name for a specific school in Idaho. The potatoes, the Shelley Russets are up for vote. That's my vote.
The Russets, indeed my favorite type of potato. So I am now going to immediately, A, go vote for that, and B, try and hit their ASB up to see if I can buy myself a t-shirt or a hat or something like that with that potato on it.
Oh, the nationwide pundits are weighing in. So how does Shelley feel about their chances? Well, Brian Holmes checked in with their principal, a Shelley graduate, class of '96, to find out.
It's one of those that a lot of people can grasp onto because we make liking a potato fun.
I mean, how can you not like a potato?
Yeah, and if you have a mascot of a potato, you got to own it. And that's one of the things that we do here in Shelley is that we own our mascot very well and take a lot of pride in it.
How much pride do they put into this potato perception? Guess what they call their school?
We call it the cellar, the spud cellar, because it looks like a spud cellar.
So tell me why the Russet became Shelley's mascot.
I would say it has something to do with the agriculture area that we live in. We have a lot of potatoes. The Burbank Russet potato is well known. And we even have a spud break, which is kind of fun. Some people call it like a fall break, but we take 2 weeks during the fall. And a lot of our kids will go and work in the fields and help the farmers get all the potatoes out of the fields.
Davis says up until the 90s, their mascots would actually be a person wearing a burlap sack. Yeah, kind of like that, but not at all like that. So they decided to bag that idea.
We wanted to kind of spice it up a little bit. If we're going to own it, we got to come up with a better looking King Russet potato. And so about 15, 20 years ago, we created the current mascot. We call him King Russet, or Boomer as he looks now, with the crown and the scepter. And yeah, our kids just own it and love it, and we have a lot of pride. It's great.
It seems the concept, let me see where you guys stand here. You guys has hit pay dirt. You're second to the hodags.
Yeah.
A hodag is a mythical lizard-like creature with razor-sharp claws from the woods of Wisconsin. Psh, I mean, a potato's better than a lizard creature thing.
Absolutely. You can eat it. It's got, the health benefits to it. And and it's Idaho. And there's lots of lizards, right? Variations of lizards and reptiles out there. And,
exactly.
And very few types of potatoes. Very unique.
But there's only one Shelley Russet.
One Shelley Russet. Yep.
Shelley's Burbank Russets won the food bracket to make it to the championship round, and you have to believe it was the king concept of the potato that did it for them, because Shelley isn't the only school with a potato mascot. There's the Moorhead Spuds from Moorhead, Minnesota, but there is just a boring naked tuber named Spuddy. We've all heard of that before, right? Also, Shelley isn't the only Idaho school left standing. The Camas County Mushers won the jobs category and are currently sitting 6th in the standings. Anyways, the Dandy Dozen champion voting ends tomorrow night, November 1st, right at midnight. We got a link in the story right now. Go vote for the Russets, ktvb.com.
the Daily Star Mirror, Halloween Recap Edition, 1922. Headline: Witches play on Halloween night. The witches, or goblins, or whatnot, did strange things last night, for it was Halloween night. But I'm happy to report there were no serious pranks. Cut clothesline, soaked windows, and scattered woodpiles were the principal events of the evening. Perhaps the biggest undertaking of the pleasure-bent youngsters was the moving of a boxcar from the side of the Mark P. Miller warehouse to the middle of 6th Street, where the car was left standing in the middle of the street. Finally, a Ford was placed prominently on the senior I bench on the campus. More than one goblin must have had a hand in that particular prank. And remember, kids, anything is extremely funny the night before, but the morning after, the cleaning up is not so much of a joke. And that's the way it is. The Daily Star Mirror, 1922, Halloween edition.
So yeah, it's Halloween if you haven't heard. And according to the Library of Congress, the holiday I should say, originates from an ancient Celtic festival called Samhain. And it was a pagan religious celebration welcoming the harvest, where people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off the ghosts, because the ghosts are out there. And from those early celebrations, it's where those ghost stories originate, and the Celtic people believed that during the festival, spirits walked the earth. So, why the history lesson? Well, what would Halloween be without a good ghost story? Mysterious sightings, cold chills, scary sounds, really everything you need for a harrowing tale. But 22 years ago, John Miller found something slightly spooky at a Boise business haunted by hounds in this 208 redial.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
The goings-on in Tina Perrin's dog grooming shop are enough to make even a Shih Tzu shiver. So you're pretty into Halloween, right?
Yeah.
But you never really bargained for this, huh?
No? This is new to me, yeah.
The sneaking suspicion that even when she's alone in the store, she's really not alone.
Grooming here and I'll just hear like a dog whining and I'll think, oh, I forgot a dog in the tub. And I'll go to look and there's no dogs in the tub. It's our ghost dog, I think.
Now even the spaniels are shaking in their shoes.
My daughter was telling me to come look at a dog picture on the wall, and our whole shop has dog pictures on the wall, so I didn't pay much attention to her till I went over and looked at it.
I was just playing with my dogs, and then I saw this.
This was no 3x5 glossy.
And I just saw this little dog printed on the wall or something. It's weird, really weird.
Really weird because nobody painted it. The dog face appeared after Tina painted the place white.
It was rust coming through. I just thought it was bizarre that we totally painted the place and it just appeared.
In the perfect shape of a bulldog.
Yeah, and if you look at it upside down.
It looks like some kind of a mutant, like spaniel of some sort. I guess if it had to be anything, though, at least it's a dog.
Yeah, tell that to the Shih Tzus, hounded by this lost soul from dog days gone by.
Well-groomed ghost story if I ever heard
That's
one.
right.
John Miller, Idaho's News Channel 7.
We're out of time, so we'll get to some comments at the end of the week. But this was the 208. Or was it?